Welcome to this tutorial about the file naming conventions and the annotation table for AutoGaitA SLEAP. I have a little screenshot here from our paper. As you can see here, our file naming convention is separated into A, B, C, D, E, and G. A is the unique prefix for animal group, for example, WT for wild type. B is the number identifying animals. C is the motor task. D is the trial number. E is the camera identifier. And G is used for differentiating whether files contain tracking of an animal body or of a beam or baseline. So looking at the example data that we also provide in the repository, you can see that for us, part A is PCCD3. Part B, the animal identifier is mouse. Part C, the motor task, is 25 millimeters. Then the trial identifier for us is run. Camera identifier being -6DLC. And then the G identifier for us is either beam training or semi-new oct. Now, when you enter this in the toolbox, in this window over here, it's important to pay attention to the underscores, because our toolbox uses these identifiers to extract animal numbers and trial numbers to know which files belong together, as well as which of the rows in the annotation table belong to these files. So for example, if you have B, the unique subject identifier, that for us is just mouse, right? Because that is what is written immediately before the animal numbers. However, for C, for the task identifier, you have to make sure to write underscore 25 millimeters, because that is what is written immediately after the animal number. And similarly also for D and E. So for the trial identifier and the camera identifier, make sure to have this hyphen here in particular. Now, looking at the annotation table, I'm just showing you the file that we also provide in the repository. And here, pay attention to the ID and the run columns, because these are the columns that the toolbox uses to know which of these rows correspond to which of the files in your folder. So for example, make sure that you don't have any duplicates in the ID, for example, so that you don't have two sets of data files that correspond to some mouse 10, for example. So more specifically, don't have mouse 10 with condition wild type and mouse 10 with condition PCCD, for example, because our toolbox doesn't use the condition column or the A identifier. These are just for yourself to keep track of things. Our toolbox only uses the ID column or part of the file name and run. So that is why we always recommend to have separate folders for your separate groups, so there's no mix-ups there. So when you enter the ID numbers or animal numbers here and the run numbers there, again, condition is mostly just for yourself to keep track of things. You input the number of step cycles, or if you have some other behavior, the number of occurrences of that behavior. And then you use these three columns, swing TIs, swing TE, stance TE, to enter the timestamp. So when did the swing phase start, when did the swing phase end, and when did the stance phase end. And this is just for the first step, for example, these next three columns for the next step, and so on. Now, if you have other behavior, you can use swing TI and stance TE just to say this is where the behavior or the occurrence of this behavior started and ended. And you can leave the swing TE column empty if you want. So this is just for locomotion analysis if people are interested in when swing phases ended. However, this column is not used by our toolbox.